PhinManiacs.com podcast, where each week we bring you reaction, analysis, previews, rumors, and so much more. And now, here's your host, Matthew Canada.
Yes, everybody, that is on your screen. PhinManiacs Live, if you're watching on a computer. And if you're on iTunes or just your phone or anything else, your iPad, but you're not watching your screen, we are in a new format. And we are turning this podcast into almost like a television show. We're going to be calling ourselves PhinManiacs Live in preparation for our lead up to our live shows beginning on March 10th. And of course, going forward from there, we're going to be bringing you slides and stats and information and news and rumors right on your screen. So instead of us just talking, you're going to see a lot more. I'm joined, of course, every week by Louis Sung, Chad Ronnebaum, and Kathy D'Amato. And this week, we are creating an offseason plan in free agency for the offensive guard, center, defensive end, and special teams positions. We're going to run through everything. Before we start, though, I want to make sure you guys are well aware of our mobile device notifications and whatnot. We are on Android devices in the Google Play Store. We are now available through there. Just search for PhinManiacs. The app is completely free. All of the latest news that we post on the website comes straight to your phone. All of the newspapers in South Florida come straight to your phone. You can follow the Twitter feeds on there straight from your phone. And you don't need to visit the website anymore. Use your phone. Use the app. Enjoy it. We'll send you push notifications when breaking news happens. You will be the most informed Dolphins fan than anyone you know if you download the app. In terms of Apple and iOS, it's currently in the review stage by Apple developers. It should be ready within the next 10 to 14 days. And finally, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast in iTunes. Again, search for PhinManiacs. Our podcast will come up, click on subscribe, and all of the new editions of this podcast will come straight to your phone. You can listen it to whenever you wish. Like I mentioned, we are going to be talking about several positions today. We're going to start right with the offensive guard. And as we know, this was a real issue last year. If you look at the players currently under contract with the team, you have Billy Turner, who's projected to be one of the starting guards, Shelley Smith, who was very underwhelming last year when he was playing the guard position. You got Dallas Thomas, who, as we know, is one of the greatest offensive linemen in Dolphins history. Just kidding about that one. And Mark Asper and Devontae Wallace, who have both been signed to futures contract and will compete in camp. News and notes on the offensive line. As I just said, the Dolphins desperately need help at their second guard position. Billy Turner is slated to go in at one of the guard positions. He is penciled in. He would have probably been the starter last week had it not been for the injury during training camp, but hopefully he stays injury-free this summer. The Dolphins will also look to add depth along their line. If you look at the players on their contract, you got Shelley Smith, who's scheduled to make $3 million in 2015. The cap hit to cut Smith is only $250,000. They'll save $2.75 million on the cap. And we don't know whether the Dolphins are going to attack the offensive guard position in free agency or the draft. There are several options in free agency if they decide to go that route. We're going to take you through some of those options. I wrote a column on PhinManiacs.com talking about all of the different options, and really there were only four that stood out to me before I turned back to Shelley Smith, believe it or not, for the second guard position. The first guy, and guys, feel free to chime in whenever you wish if you have any thoughts on players as we go through. The first guy is Orlando Franklin. In my opinion, he is by far the best option on the free agent market as an offensive guard. He was drafted in the second round out of Miami. Look, you already have the connection right there in 2011 by the Broncos. He will be 27 years old when the 2015 season begins. He played right tackle for 3 seasons when he was drafted. He was moved to left guard in 2014 because he struggled in pass protection at the right tackle position, although he did excel in run blocking. And that's one of the things why he's also, a nice target to have in free agency if, God forbid, Brandon Albert goes down again, or even Juwan James goes down. Franklin will be able to slide over to the right tackle position. If Juwan has to move back to the left side, they'll have plenty of options to cover up for everything. Per Pro Football Focus, he had a pass blocking efficiency grade of 98.6% at left guard. He had an overall pass blocking grade of 9.0 and an overall run blocking grade of 9.8.
Okay, well that's fine and dandy, but considering how good he is, you just brought up all the points of why he's so great at guard. Isn't he going to be a big money guard?
He is, and they're projecting $4 to $5 million over obviously a multi-year deal, probably 4 to 5 years. I mean, he's 27 years old. He's pretty much injury-free. Hasn't sustained many injuries during his career. The Dolphins can fix their offensive line in one shot with Orlando Franklin.
I don't know, man. It feels like see, the thing about the market these days is that everybody wants to get as much money as they can. And last season, I think there was some guards who were asking for $7 or $8 million, and at some points, I think they got something like that. So if Orlando Franklin is really one of the best in the league, and he's in his prime, no less, he's going to be looking for a lot more than just $4 to $5 million.
Think about it though. If they sign Brandon Albert comes back healthy, you got Orlando Franklin probably at the right guard spot. They might keep him left guard, but I know they want to move Billy Turner to the left guard spot, but who knows? But let's just say Franklin's in one of those spots. You got Pouncey at center, you got Turner in the other guard spot, you got Jawan James. That is one hell of an offensive line.
I don't doubt that.
Probably one of the best lines in football.
I don't doubt that one for 1 minute.
It really depends on what Hickey and Philbin and Tannenbaum value with the defensive and offensive line. If they truly believe that it battles in the trenches, then all means, sign Orlando Franklin. If you think about it, if the Dolphins had a superior offensive line last season, they'd probably win 2 more games because they'd probably get that rushing game going in short yardage situations and get those extra yards when it counted the most.
Okay, we're going to have to find some money to put that with. We're going to have to use the money we save by cutting Ellerby and Wheeler or something like that and just dedicate that to Franklin.
Okay, if you want to go cheaper, you got Mike Iupati. He's still going to command a lot of money, but I don't think he's going to command as much as Franklin. Iupati is very interesting because he was drafted in the first round of Idaho in 2010 draft by the 49ers. By all indications, and as well as Franklin, the teams are not going to try to re-sign him. They're going to let him to test the market. Iupati will be 28 years old when 2015 begins. He made the Pro Bowl the past 3 seasons, only missed 5 games in the past 5 seasons, hasn't missed a game in the past 3 seasons, but here is where his weaknesses come into play, is pass blocking. It is no secret that Iupati is not a good pass blocker. His pass blocking efficiency is 95.1%. His overall pass blocking grade from PFF was -7.5. Well, look at his overall run blocking grade was a whopping 18.5. And that's simply amazing. So, again, it depends on what the Dolphins value with this.
Okay, that Mike Iupati sounds pretty good to me, and I also look at it like this. Considering the overall success of the 49ers line last season, he's going to have to take somewhat of a discount because they're going to look at the line as a whole and say, well, you may have made things better, but the line still failed, so you probably weren't doing enough to make things work. So based on the line's performance, not his, I understand he's pretty good. So what I'm thinking is that he's going to have to take something of a discount because the offensive line as a whole pretty much failed to keep Colin Kaepernick on his feet. That's probably the Jonathan Martin factor, but that's not what we're talking about here today.
He will find a spot on a good running team, make no doubt about it. Perhaps the Buffalo Bills, perhaps who else out there is a strong running team? Maybe the Jets will be focused on being a strong running team.
The Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, I just said the Bills.
There.
I know there's a few more, but they're not coming to me at this current time. The Cowboys, they already have a strong offensive line, so I doubt he goes there. There's just a few teams that solely rely on the run quite a bit, and he will be a fit somewhere. Depends on how much money he makes and what the Dolphins value and what other teams value or whatnot. Another guy is Clint Bowling. He was drafted in the 4th round of the 2011 draft by the Bengals, has been with the team ever since. He'll be 26 years old when the season begins. Injury status has been up and down in his 4 years, mainly because he was on injury reserve in 2013 because of a knee injury. However, he didn't miss a game in 2014. His pass blocking efficiency grade is 96.8%, pass blocking grade -4.5, and run blocking grade 7.9. So he's an option for the Dolphins, probably a fallback option behind the top 2 guards with Iupati and Franklin. But Bowling is rumored to be re-signing with the Bengals, so he might not even test the market.
Yeah, I was about to bring that up. It doesn't seem like he's gonna get away from Cincinnati, considering the Bengals are making moves to apparently try to find money to keep him there.
Yeah.
And this is kind of funny to me because Andy Dalton has had one of the better offensive lines in football for a little while now, and he still managed to find ways to come up short. So that just makes me wonder, what would Tannehill be able to do if he did have an Andy Dalton-esque offensive line? That's just something to throw out there.
I think if Tannehill has a good offensive line, he will no doubt excel at the next level.
Well, we can say that about every quarterback. Yeah, we can say that about every quarterback. And imagine if Dalton had our offensive line.
Yeah.
He would have been replaced a long time ago.
Seriously, well, he should have been replaced a long time ago Anyways, that's beside the point. That's a discussion for another day. So we got Franklin, Iapati, and Bowling so far. And Rob Sims is a fallback option. As you can see, he's 31 years old. He'll be 31 when the 2015 season begins. So he's not like he's a long-term fill at that position. In 2010, he signed with the Detroit Lions after being drafted by the Seahawks in 2006. He hasn't missed a game since 2009, but his production has steadily declined each season. Last season, per Pro Football Focus, he had a pass blocking efficiency grade of 96.1%. Overall pass blocking grade was 8.0, and overall run blocking grade was minus 2.6. He would be a stopgap for the Dolphins at the offensive guard position if they couldn't find someone in free agency, one of their top-level guys. If they couldn't find anyone in the draft, or if they don't like anybody in the draft, Sims would be a perfect guy for 1 to 2 years possibly, and fill in probably quite nicely. Chad, you've been quiet throughout these slides. After seeing these 4 players, do you want the Dolphins to go after any of them?
Not really. I mean, Franklin would be nice. They clearly need to upgrade the guard position, but guard is just one of those positions where it's not a premium position in what you pay for, and I don't see Miami wanting to jump out right away and immediately throw a big contract at a guard. I much more think they're going to take the approach of they're just going to sit there and wait, and they're going to go through the draft, and if they don't get what they want in the draft, then you're going to see them pursue one of these guys, maybe like a Rob Sims, just to be like a 1 or 2 year contract in there. But I mean, the real question is, are these players significantly better than Shelley Smith? Yeah, I think they're better, but I don't know that they're a huge contract better versus waiting to see what you can get in the draft, because in my opinion is at that position you can get really good quality players in the 2nd and 3rd and even the 4th round of the draft at the guard position. Guards don't come off the board as quickly, so I think most teams you'll see take that approach. You know, you might see 1 or 2 of these guys come off the board, but I just don't think there's going to be a lot of activity at the position in general in free agency.
So you expect the Dolphins to go via the draft?
I think they're going to look to the draft before they sign a bigger veteran. I don't think you're going to see them in the first couple weeks of free agency jump out and sign a guard right away. I don't think Shelley Smith's terrific. I don't think he's horrible. I think they're comfortable enough with where they're at that they'll wait on the draft. If they don't draft a guy that they feel like they could start, then I think they'll sign one in free agency post-draft, and that will more than likely be a 1 or 2 year prove-it type of deal.
Okay. Kathy, if the Dolphins had a good offensive guard last season, let's say 2 good offensive guards, and let's flash back to the Packers game where Dolphins had the ball with a few minutes to go and they couldn't get the tough yards on the ground. Let's flash back to the Lions game where they couldn't get the tough yards on the ground. Let's flash back to the Broncos game where they couldn't get tough yards on the ground. Do you think 2 good offensive guards would result in a few more wins for the Dolphins each season?
Really? Do we have to flash back to those games? My heart is still broken over them. But yeah, I absolutely think that could have made the difference in those close games.
Lewis, any thoughts from you? I know you were chiming in, but any thoughts of who you would think would be a good fit in free agency?
Well, I didn't even know this Rob Sims guy before you brought him up, but the name that I had been hearing had been Clint Bowling. Unfortunately, since he seems like he's going to be brought up by the Bengals once again, I don't know, man. Personally, as I don't really care who it is, as long as this person is actually serviceable and can take care of that final spot on the offensive line. I don't care if Dallas Thomas hits his 3rd year and suddenly becomes great like everybody else seems to. They hit the 3rd year and suddenly they're great. If that happens, I'm fine. I don't care. Give Tannehill a good offensive line for the first time in his career. Please, please, please. I'm tired of seeing him hitting the ground every 5 minutes. We calling him the rubber man these days, but unfortunately, the rubber eventually wears off, and one of these times he's not going to get back up. So we really need to give this kid some protection.
Yeah, the Dolphins. Go ahead, Chad.
I'm just saying that's clear. They've had a lot of difficulty with pressure right up the middle, and I thought College would. He seemed like he was going to be able to hold the fort down there in camp, but he kind of, I thought, digressed throughout the year, and he just was kind of disappointing. And there was a few games where he gave up some very significant plays where he just flat out missed his blocks. To answer your question, though, like, on those games we lost last year, with those short yardage plays where we didn't convert, part of that is guard play, but I mean, a lot of it too, they weren't in run formations, a lot of those plays. But I think the answer this year is already on the team with Billy Turner. I think everybody's going to be surprised at how good he really is. I really am sticking with the idea that he had an injury and he just got behind and they weren't able to get him caught up to start. But just the limited amount I've seen him play, he looks like he's a very good run blocker. And so I think he will be the key to run behind. And with these guys, yeah, I understand where Lewis is going. He wants somebody that's serviceable, but I'm tired of serviceable free agents.
Well, I mean, Chad, is not. I don't mean serviceable like just a guy who's good enough to get the job done. What I mean by that is just somebody where he can just lock it down, but we don't have to be like cemented with this guy for the next several years or whatever, because I don't want to have the most expensive offensive line in football, and then it turns out that these guys are not going to last that long anyway. That's what I'm worried about. That's the one thing I had, because we already have a lot of money tied up in Albert. We're going to have a lot of money tied up in Pouncey. We're going to have a lot of money tied up in, say, we sign Orlando Franklin. So that means that we have 3 extremely expensive offensive linemen, and we need to save some money for some of the other guys. So
I agree completely.
I'm worried about.
Agree completely. I really think the best. That's why I think they're going to sit still and they're going to try to draft a talented guard in the draft. And I'm picturing in the middle rounds, somewhere between the second and fourth. I think they're going to target a guard in there because they need the talent and they need a guy that they can put in there. Because you're right, by the time they play Pouncey, by the time they pay Albert, you don't want that much money tied into that one position. They kind of got caught this year in a receiver doing that, where you had so much money tied into a position. When you get into the offseason, it's hard to field a complete team because you're lacking. So I'd love to have Franklin. I mean, if they can get him in there, but I don't want him on like a 4 or 5 year massive contract to get him. I don't think he's that good.
We'll definitely see where the Dolphins go with this. The big question is, obviously, are they going to be players in free agency, or are they going to stay with the draft? In terms of offensive guard, it's no secret you can get a good offensive guard in the draft. Just depends on what the Dolphins feel their needs are heading in there and what needs they get in free agency. But moving forward from the guard position, moving on over to the offensive line, at the center position, we have 2 players currently under contract with the team, Mike Pouncey and Sam Brenner. At this point, I'm going to throw it over to Kathy, who's going to talk more about these center positions. Kathy, go ahead.
All right, so right now, Pouncey is due $7.5 million, and in order for the Dolphins to lower that number, they're looking at a 5-year contract with a hefty signing bonus. If, or rather when they do this, his cap number would be only around $3 million for 2015, but it would increase in the following years. I mean, I don't think he is worth the money that his brother makes. However, he was an elite player until he was forced to move to guard. And I think and hope that once he gets back to his natural position, it is possible that he could be elite again as long as he's healthy. I can't imagine either Pouncey or the Dolphins not agreeing to this deal, but I mean, if Pouncey wants more, I think it is time to move on. Some of the other players that we could be looking at, though, include Rodney Hudson. He was drafted in the 2nd round out of Florida State in 2011 by the Chiefs. He's young. He'll only be 26 years old when the 2015 season begins. And although he was placed on injury reserve in 2012 due to a knee injury, he hasn't missed a game since 2013. According to Pro Football Focus, he had a pass block efficiency grade of 98.5. His overall pass blocking grade was 4.2, and his overall run blocking grade was 4.7. Also, we have Steven Wisniewski, drafted out of the
I think you
second
got that
round.
one right.
I thought so. I wasn't sure though. But he was drafted out of the second round from Penn State in 2011 by the Raiders, and he's also young. He'll only be 26 in 2015. He missed 3 games in 2013 due to knee injury, but he didn't miss a single game in 2014. Pro Football Focus had a pass blocking efficiency of 98.1%, and his overall pass blocking grade was negative 0.56, but his overall run blocking grade was 3.5.
I'm just going to jump in right here and Stefan Wisniewski, I think that's how you say it. He's interesting because he can also probably play the guard position as well. So if, for whatever reason, talks fall apart with Mike Pouncey and they can't agree on a number, they might be able to jump in and say, hey, we're going to sign you. You won't play center this year. You're going to move to guard, but then you're going to slide over to center for the next several years when Pouncey leaves after this year. I know that might create some bad dynamics, but it's a possibility if things fall apart.
True, yeah. I like the option of Wisniewski, and his name's fun to say. But also we have Will Montgomery. He is a little bit older. He was drafted in the 7th round out of Virginia Tech in 2006 by the Panthers. So he's going to be 32 years old when the season begins. He was bounced around from the Panthers to the Jets, the Redskins, and now the Broncos. But he hasn't missed a game at all due to injury in his NFL career, which is pretty remarkable. His Pro Football Focus had a pass block efficiency grade of 98.9, and his overall pass blocking grade was 5.1, and his run blocking grade was 2.6.
Montgomery's interesting. Again, if Pouncey talks fall apart, he could be signed for depth purposes. He didn't play a lot of games this year because he was forced into action later on in the season. But he's good depth around the offensive line. He could be signed as a depth option, or he could be signed as someone who might be a stopgap next year, or, probably, actually that's probably not realistic considering his age. He'll be 33 next season. So really, he would be for depth purposes on the offensive line, but a pretty damn good depth on the offensive line.
Yeah.
Lewis, Chad, any thoughts on the center? I mean, the Dolphins are rumored to be in talks with Pouncey. Everything points that the deal with Pouncey will get done. Is it a smart move by the Dolphins?
I always just say be careful what you hear this time of year because you don't know who's talking. Is that Pouncey's agent talking? Is that the Dolphins front office talking? So I kind of take it with a grain of salt when you hear that because we've heard so far that they're going to get Clay signed. We've heard they're going to get Odrick signed. We've heard they're going to get Pouncey signed. And I think what you're hearing is Miami wanting to be clear that they want those players back, but that is by no means that they're close on a financial arrangement with those players. And so my guess is that they want to get Mike Pouncey back. I think I mentioned this on the show a couple weeks ago that I think Miami's probably offering Pouncey a deal where he's not going to be like a top 5 paid center. I don't think they'll give him that right now because they'd rather have him go a year and just to see how his hip holds up. But I think they're probably offering him in the range of a top 10 paid center, and if he'll take that now, they'll guarantee some cash to him and kind of decrease the risk for him if he is going to have to come back and worry about being re-injured. So I think that's where it's at. Whether or not Pouncey will take it, that's hard to say. I am kind of a fan of Steven Wisniewski. I get a little hesitant on going too hard on the Pro Football Focus because they don't take the whole thing into account. I mean, if you look at the Raiders, they have a rookie quarterback and they didn't have a very good skill set at the receiver position. So you're going to get more sacks, and that can inevitably grade your guards down on how they're game planning to try to adjust for that. So I don't take, especially on teams that are poor like the Raiders or the Jaguars or teams like that, I take the Pro Football Focus stats a little less accurately than on the better teams. But so with that being said, I don't think Miami needs to go too crazy on trying to lock Pouncey down. I think there are some other good centers out there, and it's not a premium paid position. And centers they're not drafted that high typically, and they're not paid that much typically. So I would be fine with giving Pouncey a decent contract, but I wouldn't offer him top 5 center money this year. That's where I'd be at.
Okay, but exactly how much would top 5 center money be exactly? That's what I want to know.
I mean, that's obviously depending on market value, depending on what the market pays for it, and everything else. You know, it could go all the way up. You saw what Marquise Pouncey got. He got a huge deal, and then Mike Pouncey wants the same deal as him.
Okay, well, he can't have that money. So, are we really? Do you think we're gonna have to go looking into these other guys? I really do hope that Pouncey gets to stay, because regardless of the issues that went by him, the Hernandez thing and the bullying scandal, he's a leader on this football team, and we need some players like Pouncey who have that fire, that competitiveness in them, because it's amazing to me sometimes. It feels like there are only a handful of players on football teams that you can really tell want to win. Then they'll do anything it takes to win. We heard somewhere in the middle of the season when Pouncey came back that he was happy to play guard or whatever because he had played guard in college, and there were reports out that he actually wanted to play guard, and then it comes out that he didn't like playing guard, but he was just doing whatever it takes to win for the team. I mean, whatever. The point is he was willing to move over for the sake of helping the team win, and that's the kind of player we need. I'd rather have Pouncey at center, not at guard, but of course at a reasonable price. Of course, the question is, what exactly is reasonable? Is it $6 million? Is it $7 million? What is a reasonable price for a potentially top center?
I would probably. I had to look it up, Lewis, because I wasn't well versed on what all the centers are getting paid. But right now, Mike Pouncey, if they didn't do anything, they just paid his current contract out for the remainder of this year, he'd be the 6th highest paid center in the league, and that's at $7.4 million. I would offer him probably around $5 to $6 million a year over like 4 to 5 years. But here would be the key component. I mean, the size of contracts are pretty meaningless. It's always all about the guaranteed money, and so I would probably give him 2 to 3 years of a 4 or 5 year deal guaranteed. That's how I would do it, and that's what you're basically saying is, look, we're not paying you crazy money. We're not paying you $9-10 million a year, but we are going to pay you in the top 10 centers, and we're going to guarantee that money to you the next 3 years, irregardless of what happens. I mean, no matter what happens, we're going to pay you that amount of money. I think that's a pretty solid win-win deal for both sides, because Mike Pouncey knows he's going to get a solid payday, and the Dolphins then get a player for the exact reasons you were touching on. He's been committed to the team. He has a lot of talent, and it could work out very well for both sides. But what worries me is Mike Pouncey still, in his mind, feels like, I am the best center in the NFL. I should be making 10 to 11 million a year, and he decides just to wait and go test free agency to see what he can get.
I don't know. It feels like we've had this conversation before, and I think we have. Yeah, that's what we were talking about. His ego. What's his ego going to allow for a player of his caliber? Because look, we know what he can do when he's healthy, and I'm sure we're all hoping that he goes back to being what we knew he could be before he got hurt. But there's always that bit of doubt, and I understand that's why we're so against bringing back Sean Moreno, because he got hurt and he's injury prone and stuff like that. And while I disagree with that, I can see the point that's being made. Pouncey, on the other hand, has been a core member of the team ever since he got here. So I'm hesitant to just let somebody like that, who everybody likes and everybody is familiar with, and is quite honestly borderline face of the franchise, to just let them go like that. That would be like, at this point, it would be like getting rid of Tannehill or someone like that, and that just doesn't sit well with me.
Oh, I agree absolutely, Liz. I wouldn't be trying to run him out of town, but what would be your Like if you're Dennis Hickey and Mike Tannenbaum right now, what kind of deal would you be trying to present to Mike Pouncey, knowing he's going to play one more year for you either way? Would you be trying to lock him down now at even bigger money, or would you want to sit and wait?
Well, I would have to look at Marquise's numbers first. Let me just see if I can pull that up real quick.
I have it right now. This coming year, Marquise Pouncey is going to get paid $8.1 million. That's how much he'll count against the Steelers' salary cap anyway.
Well, I'm not willing to go that far. Maybe we can see 6, 7 million, maybe 7 if he does well. Maybe we can do some kind of incentive deal. But for 6 million for someone of Pouncey's caliber, I would be willing to pay that.
So you mean for the upcoming year, or you would do that over the next 4 to 5 years?
For the next 4 to 5 years, it's like a per year thing.
Right. Yeah, I could get there with it. Would you maybe how much would you guarantee to him?
Let's see, 5 to 6 million, 5 years. That's 30. I don't know, maybe 11 million guaranteed.
I think I'd be right there. I mean, if that's where Pouncey would agree at, I would be right there with you. I would be at the table trying to iron that out. If he was wanting 8 or 9 million a year, I'd get a little.
Because Marquise is making 13 guaranteed, right?
I don't know what his overall contract. I just looked at who are the biggest 2015 paid centers for the coming.
Yeah, because
season.
I have Marquise's salary. I have Marquise's contract up right now. It looks like he's making $13 million guaranteed, and that's on a 5-year, $44 million contract. Yeah. That's at almost $9 million annually. So
exactly,
for $11 million for Pouncey at 6 to 7 per year is actually a little more guaranteed than what Marquise is making on average.
Yeah, it'd be real close. I think that'd probably get it done. I just wouldn't want to get much higher than 6 or 7 a year, because I feel like at that position for 4 or 5 million, you can still get a real solid center. And I mean, how much better is Mike Pouncey relative to the other centers in the league would be what I would have to evaluate.
Well, I'm willing to bet that Pouncey's going to step right back up and become one of the top centers again. We keep looking at his performance on the line this year, but we keep forgetting that he was out of position. I've said this before. It's not as easy as one might think to just jump back into a position you played when you were in college. That would be like telling Tannehill to go back at wide receiver, or back when he was in high school. I think he was a cornerback at that point. He's not used to doing that anymore, and it's not just like riding a bike. You have to get back. You have to get back to what it takes to be there. You have to. I'm sure he has like some basic instincts, but that doesn't mean he's been trained to be at guard up until he came back from his injury. So if you've been playing center all your career ever since you got out of college, it's not so easy to just jump back into guard again. So his performance can be attributed to that.
I agree, absolutely, but you got to decide, is it worth signing him now? Because you can pay him $7.4 million right now and just have him play another year, and then if you're just looking at it from the view of the Miami Dolphins, if Mike Pouncey has a serious injury, let's say the 15th game of the year he blows out his knee, then you don't have any guaranteed money. You're able to go into the next season and get a new center. So to me, if I'm going to give him a guaranteed contract a year in advance before his contract's up, he's got to take somewhat of a discount. Because I think when you get to that $8 or $9 million a year number, you can give that to him in 2016 and sign him.
Okay, and that's fine with me. I just want to. It's for someone like Pouncey, who's not only, and I keep saying this, not only a really good player, he's also a leader, which this team has once again proven that we desperately need. I remember getting into a conversation with some other guys a couple years ago about saying that we had more leaders, and if you have too many leaders on the team, then you have no one left to lead because everybody's a leader. Well, guess what? We tried signing all these leaders, and in the end, it still wasn't enough because we still had a lot of mess in that locker room. So, I'm definitely against removing leaders and replacing them with somebody who's not necessarily one.
Oh, I agree. I like Mike Pouncey and want him to stay. I absolutely would agree with that. I think it's all about timing and dollars right now. That's really what's on the table. I hope they're close. That's what I hope. That's what we've heard the reports on, and that it's not that Mike Pouncey's agent wanting to get the Dolphins to the table before the season. It's hard to say.
Kathy, after going through all these guys, you want Mike Pouncey to be back?
Yes,
Long
I definitely do. I think he will be. back up to par again. Hopefully, as long as he doesn't get injured, but I don't think it's worth losing him.
Yeah,
So
and
you
I
do.
agree
So
with
you.
all of you.
So you do
Go
agree,
ahead.
Kathy, that it was the fact that he was at guard that made him go down?
Oh yeah, I definitely agree with that.
And also, he was battling an injury last year. He wasn't. I don't know if he was fully recovered, but I
No, he
agree with all
wasn't.
of you. You pay your own guys. Pouncey's grown up in Florida his whole life. Went to college in Florida. He's Dolphins love him. Pay your own guys. If you look back at 2013, when he was back at center, he had a PBE pass blocking efficiency grade of 98.1%, that eighth best in the NFL. Overall pass blocking grade of 6.2 and overall run blocking grade of 1.6. He's formed in a relationship with Tannehill already. I think the Dolphins absolutely should keep him at center and sign that long-term extension. Moving on from that, we're going to jump on the defensive line edge defenders and the players currently under contract. Lewis is going to take this over once I'm done with this slide. Olivia Vernon, Cameron Wake, Derek Shelby, Terrence Fede, Dion Jordan, and Emmanuel Dyke or DK or something like that.
I like
Just one, DK sounds good. Just one news tidbit: the Dolphins carried only 5 defensive ends during 2014. Will likely only carry 5 during 2015. The big question though is what do they do with Dion Jordan? Lewis, take it away.
Okay. I'm going to save Dion Jordan for last because I'll probably go into a long dialogue about that. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the guys we already know about. Olivier Vernon, he's been improving steadily ever since he got into this league. He showed up as a special team star in his rookie year, and he got everybody's attention. He stepped up and started making awesome things happen in his second year, and now here in his third year, I believe. Is this his third year, correct?
I want to say it's his fourth. He's coming into his fourth, I believe.
Oh, is it?
I was thinking. I could be wrong.
Sometimes it feels like sometimes we don't really remember how long it's been since these guys have played.
I do know this is his last contract year. This is the last year of his rookie contract. Then he'll be up for contract next year.
Oh boy, considering how well he's been doing for the past few years now, he's 11.5 sacks in 2013, and then this year he only had 6.5, but that's probably because the defensive line as a whole pretty much just dropped off the face of the earth. But I mean, for someone like Olivier Vernon, who's really came out of nowhere, he was a third-round pick out of Miami, out of Miami. So it's like a former Hurricane. Everybody loves Hurricanes around here, apparently, because everybody's excited about Dorsett and Walford and Johnson and Perryman. We love Hurricanes down here, which is understandable because it seems like these guys have a lot more talent than they're given their credit. He's done, over his 3 years, he's made 135 total, 135 tackles combined. He's had some help from his guys with the other ones. 102 solo tackles. So, I mean, for someone like Vernon, I would be willing to pay, again, $6 or $7 million. At least right now. We'll have to see what the market is at that point in time. But for Vernon, I would definitely want to keep him around because the next guy, Cameron Wake, we don't like to talk about this, but he just turned 33 in January. This is only his 6th season, but he's already 33 years old. And I've said this before. He's a beast. He'll make sure he's ready to go. Even this past season, he had 11.5 sacks, and that's the third best he's ever had in his whole career. But I mean, he's not going to be around forever. I want to believe he'll stay really good for the next couple of years, maybe even the next 3 years. But how much longer can he stay elite as a pass rusher? He's not even that great at run defending. He used to be. I'm told he used to be a pretty good run defender, but now he's pretty much a one-trick pony at this point in time. He's a pass rusher. That's what he's built for. That's what he should be doing.
How many years do you think he has left in him?
Conservatively, 2. If I want to be crazy, I want to say 3 or 4, but that would mean that he'd be 37 years old. I know that John Abraham, he was almost 38, and he was still pretty good at what he did before he retired due to the concussions. Is he still in the league? I think he retired with the concussions.
Who is that?
John Abraham?
He's still in the league.
Okay, well, then he's still not. Then he's probably like
officially still in the league, I believe.
Yeah, but he's not on a team.
No.
The last team he was on, I think it was the Falcons.
Wasn't he with the Cardinals?
Did he?
I'm
It's
not.
like, some of these names.
I'm not positive.
Some of these names are so obscure.
But it's fine.
But whatever. Yeah. So I mean, I want to say that Wake's gonna last for a long time now, but it really gonna depend on how much money he's gonna want once his contract runs out. As it is, let me pull that up right now. Actually, he's already gonna be making a little bit, pretty big, decent chunk of money this season. According to Over the Cap, he's gonna be making. Let me wait for it to come up here.
Well, Lewis is doing that. If you guys want to get sick on Olivier Vernon, he's 24 years old. He's one of these guys that came out as a junior of college.
Oh boy!
And here's his 4 years. He's been paid $390,000, $500,000, $590,000, and this year he's set to make $700,000. That's Olivier Vernon. So he is who, I know Pouncey's out there, but he is who the Dolphins should be talking to about extending right now, because he's a guy that just hasn't made that much money, and I would gladly pay him a good chunk of money right now to lock him up 4 or 5 years, because that's a big time target. When a guy's 24 years old, you can give that guy like that 5 years, a 5-year deal, no problem, because he's just so young.
Yeah, for sure. I would. That's why signing him back is so important, because of the dangers of what's going on with Cameron Wake. According to this Over the Cap salary, Cameron Wake's going to be making. He's going to be a $10,450,000 cap hit just for this upcoming season. So he's going to be making a pretty decent chunk of money again, for the fact that he's already 33, and assuming he's okay for the next couple of years. He's going to count for $9.8 million in 2016, and then the number kind of drops off because he's not under contract anymore. So by 2017, he won't even be with the team. That would make him 35 years old. And by that point, you have to ask yourself, can Cameron Wake still be an elite player? We'll see. I mean, I don't know for sure. I would like to say that Cameron Wake is still going to be that elite pass rusher guy that we can have as a depth guy, because I really don't think he can be an every down guy by the time he's 35. Even Jason Taylor wasn't on the field for every play once he came back to the Dolphins. He was a situational pass rusher. So how much are you willing to pay for someone like that who only comes onto the field, like, say, in a third down situation? That's why you need to have someone like Olivier Vernon ready to go, so we still have one of those elite. I think Olivier Vernon will become elite given time, but that's why it was so important to sign him back now, because I don't think Cameron Wake's going to last this much longer as a true every down starter. I mean, we know he's a freak of nature when it comes to athleticism. His body is unbelievably toned. He's ready to go. He's in shape every year. So that's something we have to look at. Derek Shelby, he's
Lewis, hold on. Before you continue, I got Chad's opinion, your opinion. I want to get Kathy's thoughts on how long she thinks Wake is going to last over the next few years.
It's really disappointing to me, because I don't think he's going to last too much longer. I would love it if he proved me wrong.
That's what she said.
He is pretty easy to look at as well, but yeah, I don't know how much longer he's going to be elite like he is now.
Well, that's why I brought up the Jason Taylor comparison, because even JT, the legendary Jason Taylor, he's a future Hall of Famer, but once he started getting to that point where he got like into 35, 36, he couldn't keep up with the every down workload anymore. I don't know if maybe that had something to do with the fact the Dolphins were in a 3-4 and he was playing as an outside linebacker for a little while, but Jason Taylor, even he fell off once he started getting too old, and I can't imagine that Cameron Wake is going to last much longer. There is a factor, though, that I didn't account for, and I'll bring it up now. Jason Taylor, by that point in time, had over 10 years of NFL experience. Wake has only had 6 thus far. So it's possible that he could last longer because he doesn't have as much of a beating on his body that JT had, but you have to consider the age factor. I wouldn't be willing to pay Wake $8 million a year for one more contract if he was only going to be like a situational pass rusher. Definitely not. That's why it's so important that we find a way to lock up Olivier Vernon one more time. Now let me bring up to Derek Shelby. I mean, he's better than a lot of people give him credit for. He's a rotational guy. Whenever Wake or Vernon need a break, they bring in Shelby, and he's pretty serviceable with what he does. He's not a star or anything, but he's solid. And we need guys like that we can just throw in there and say, we'll be okay for now until the next guy comes in. Shelby is that guy. So there's really not much else to talk about with him. He's a depth guy. He's not going to be he might start for a defensive end starved team. He's pretty good, but I would want to keep him around just as a depth signing because God knows we need help on the defensive line these days. Emmanuel Deke, or DK, whatever you want to call him. 6'6", 270 pounds, came out of Riverdale, Georgia. Came out as a senior out of Georgia Tech. His Georgia Tech profile says he was a 2-year starter. Great size, plays with outstanding effort. Okay, whatever. Role increase each season on the flats. He has lateral quickness and change of direction. Okay, great. He's a futures contract. We'll see what he can do. This is the equivalent of a practice squad guy. Let's see what he does in practice. I haven't seen much of him, and I don't even think he was at the combine because I can't find any scouting reports on him for that.
Yeah, and he was signed to a futures contract, so he'll be competing for a spot. The big question again is, what do the Dolphins do with Dion Jordan? Do they move him full-time to linebacker position? Do they keep him at defensive end? If they keep him at defensive end and put him in a hybrid, you got your 5 guys right there. If they don't, then DK has a legitimate shot to make the roster.
Yeah, okay, let me get into Dion Jordan now.
Get your popcorn ready.
Yeah, exactly. Get your popcorn ready because I'm about to unleash here.
Go for it.
6'6". Now he's 275 pounds. He was an outside linebacker in a 3-4 when he was in Oregon. He was consistently dropping back into coverage. He was covering tight ends. He was covering wide receivers. He was doing amazing things as this awesome linebacker. And the first thing that the team does is they move up to draft him, and they make him a defensive end. Put his hand in the ground and rush the passer. And ever since then, we have been pulling out our hair, wishing that Philbin would realize that this man is not a defensive end. He's not as great when he has to stick his hand in the ground. He didn't stick his hand in the ground when he was at Oregon. He was always standing up and either rushing the passer, standing up, or he was covering someone else in coverage. That is not a defensive end. That is a linebacker. And I know there are certain people out there who believe that Dion Jordan really is a defensive end, and I'm not even referring to the coaches. There are actually some people out there who are saying that Jordan is not that great in coverage, and to that I would reply, well, of course he's not. Of course he isn't that good as a linebacker. He hasn't had a chance to practice at linebacker. Every time we've seen him in practice, he's had his hand in the dirt, and he was practicing with Wake and Vernon and Shelby and those guys, and he was practicing as a defensive end. So, of course, he's not going to do well at linebacker when he gets thrown in there because he hasn't had any time to practice. Just like when Pouncey failed at guard, Jordan is going to fail at linebacker because Jordan has not had a chance to practice as a linebacker. In training camp, if they're serious about trying to see what Dion Jordan can do at linebacker, I expect him to be practicing with Jelani Jenkins, Jordan Tripp, and whoever else is at linebacker at that point in time. He can be a pass-rushing linebacker. He knows how to cover tight ends. He just needs a chance to practice there and stop trying to fit the square peg into the round hole. Dion Jordan is a physical specimen like no one else on this football team right now at that defensive spot, and we need to be using him as something that can be an anti-Gronk repellent. How many people are there that could quite honestly say that they have been able to keep Gronk contained? I can count on maybe one finger, and that one finger is Dion Jordan. There's no one else out there who can handle it. Normal linebackers can't keep up with Gronk. Safeties get run over by Gronk. So for Dion Jordan to say, hey, I was able to shut down Gronk for a little while. That means something. That means make him that linebacker. Stop trying to make him a hand-in-the-dirt defensive end. That's not where he functions best. He's only been able – Dion Jordan, in his 2 years as a Dolphin, as a third overall pick, he has managed to put together 3 total sacks. 3 sacks. That's it. And he's only managed to, for a combined, not even solo tackles alone, he's only managed to combine for 46 tackles. 7 of them were with help from his teammates. You see how Jordan chases down running backs these days. You see how Jordan can keep an eye on the quarterback. You can see how Jordan gets, every once in a while, he'll get an opportunity to drop back. He's not great at dropping back anymore because he hasn't had a chance to practice, but he can still do it. Just let him practice there. When training camp comes around, he needs to be practicing with Messi, Jenkins, and Tripp, not the defensive line coach, not the defensive ends, not the defensive tackles. He needs to be practicing with the linebackers, so that way he can become possibly one of the best outside linebackers in football. A linebacking core that had a Dion Jordan on the right, and then you had Jelani Jenkins on the left. And then whether it's Cole Messi in the middle or maybe we draft Denzel Perryman, I don't care. But that would be the linebacker core that the Dolphins need to make sure that Kevin Coyle can run the rest of his defense. Because like I've said in the past and like many people have reported, Kevin Coyle's defense works at its best when he has a very strong linebacker core. And if Jordan could learn how to be the outside linebacker because he's had a chance to practice and get used to being an outside linebacker in a 4-3, then we're set to go. We'll figure out a way to make it work with the defensive linemen we have. We still have Anthony Johnson, A.J. Francis, Kamal Johnson is there on the defensive tackle spot. I mean, we have options. Dion Jordan as an outside linebacker would open up a whole new world of possibilities for us to do. We just need to let him try to do it. That's all I'm going to say on him. I've had a long enough talk about him. What do you guys think?
I think you have had a long enough talk on him. I'll open up to the floor to Shatter Kathy.
Well, I'll say this, Lewis. I am not set that Dion Jordan has to be an outside linebacker. I'm not set that he has to be a defensive end. What I want to see is him on the field. And this season I think it was the biggest failure of our coaching staff was Dion Jordan. And the only excuse they can mention is that, he missed the games with the suspensions that he had related to the performance-enhancing drugs and things of that nature. And so I understand he missed some time. But with that being said, how can you start Jason Trusnick, Kelvin Shepard, Philip Wheeler over Dion Jordan? I mean,
because he hasn't practiced at linebacker. He's not better than them right now.
I know, but he's just so much superior talented to those players. And when he was in there at the limited time they put him in, he was making plays. Every time I watch him on film, he's pressuring quarterbacks. He's covering people. He's covering Gronkowski. He's making tackles in the flat. And when I watch the other guys, I'm watching Kelvin Shepard not be able to get out in the flat and make a tackle or miss a tackle. I'm watching Jason Trusnick getting smoked in coverage. It was so frustrating that the coaches were not able to get him involved. And to me, that is what good coaching is all about. Coaching is not about who has the best scheme, who has the best system. It's about who can look at the players that they're given, figure out what their strength is, and figure out how to use them to be successful. And the coaches, in my opinion, failed miserably at getting Dion Jordan involved with how much talent he had.
Okay, but if he's only been practicing at defensive end, why do you expect him to be allowed to get so many shots at linebacker when you have actual linebackers on the roster?
I expect a coach in the NFL to be able to show a guy how to play linebacker. That's what I expect. And
but that's the thing. That's why he needs to practice there, because if he has no practice at linebacker, he's got no business being at linebacker. That's why he needs to practice.
I understand that. You can't expect him to go in there and have never played it and play it. But my point is how could they have not showed him how to play linebacker? I mean, it's not that hard to learn 2 positions. And so,
because they wanted to make him a defensive end.
Yeah,
they were showing him how to play a second position. They were teaching him how to play defensive end.
Well, here's the problem I have is I have no problem. I think Dion Jordan's fully capable of being a good defensive end, but why do you put Dion Jordan at defensive end when you've got Cameron Wake and Olivier Vernon? It doesn't make sense.
And Derek Shelby, who's actually, I think, actually better at him as a defensive end right now.
And so you've got this high valued pick that's very talented, and they've trained him to basically just back up players and play on special teams. And so I never have understood it, and I don't understand it to this day. And they were very late in the season giving him a few reps at linebacker, but
he failed.
Well,
he failed because he had no practice.
No, he's. I think he's very well. He's very capable, I should say, of playing strong side linebacker. And
I don't doubt that. He's capable.
All this talk about practice.
To sum it up, when you just talk about practice, we sitting here. I'm supposed to be the franchise player, and we in here talking about practice. I mean, not a game. We talking about practice.
So practice, of course he needs to practice, but come on. All that practice, if he's not using the game, then what the hell's the point?
Exactly. I put it on the coaches. I think it's a very clear failure on whoever you want to pin on, whether you want to put it Philbin or Coyle, but not having him on the field almost every play is just ridiculous with how fast he is, how strong he is, and how he had shown a propensity to make plays on the field. And for them to start players that really are at best backups in the NFL ahead of him, just to me was just a total failure in coaching.
Kathy, how about you?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Kathy, where do you think Dion Jordan belongs?
This thing is a whole confusing and frustrating mess. I agree completely with Chad. I think the coaches shouldn't have done what they did, but there's nothing we can do about that, unfortunately.
But if you had your choice, where would you put him?
I don't know. I don't know.
Where do you think he fits better? Would you think he's better with his hand in the dirt, or do you think he's better covering people?
I think he's better covering people. I still think he could do both, but it just wasn't working.
So, I mean, in a way, I agree with you. It's hard for me to figure out where he belongs as well. But I think because the Dolphins have so many edge rushers, well, I mean, even not so many, but they got Vernon, they got Wake, who are bookends. They got Shelby, who's pretty good. Fiday's coming along nicely. If they move Jordan to linebacker,
talk about Fiday.
Yeah, if you move Jordan to linebacker, then you pretty much solve your linebacker position. I mean, keep Meese in the middle. We'll talk about linebacker next week, I believe. Keep Meese in the middle. You got Jenkins on the outside, Jordan on the outside, and then bam, you're set. And then you can go in round one, best player available. Right,
Dorio Green Beckham.
Safety, yeah. We'll talk about the draft after free agency is all wrapped up and such. But that's what I would do. I think the Dolphins are leaning towards that. I think they wanted to do it last year, but the suspension threw them off and everything else. I don't know. Hopefully the coaching staff understands it and is working towards it, and then we can move on. And
I see a lot of potential in Terrence Fiday moving forward. He was the one who made the punt block to win the game against the Vikings. I mean, coming out of Marist, a small school, there's your example of one of the small school guys being a hit. We know that Terrence Fiday is talented. We saw it in training camp. We saw it in preseason. Everybody was excited about what he could do. So let's not hit Hickey too hard for picking all these small school players, because we know what kind of potential they have. They just weren't ready to play right away. That's all. No big deal.
Absolutely. You know what, Lewis? I agree with you on Fiday to the degree. I would actually consider trading Derek Shelby if you had a suitor and a decent pick. And not because I don't like Derek Shelby, but just because this is his last year. He's going to be a restricted free agent, and there's no way they can keep him going after the season. I mean, with Jordan and Wake and Vernon and these guys and Fiday. And I think Fiday's talented enough. He could probably play the role Shelby's been playing with very little drop-off. I know he's a lot less inexperienced, but if somebody offered me a third or fourth round pick for Derek Shelby right now, knowing that this is going to be his final year in Miami, I'd have to seriously consider it.
Yeah, I can see where you're going with that. Of course, we would have to look at defensive end moving forward, because again, we have to, as sad as it is, we have to prepare ourselves for Cameron Wake's departure.
Well, I think, you can play Dion Jordan at linebacker. He should be on the field playing linebacker, but you can still have him play the role of if Cameron Wake gets hurt, he can slide over to D end if you have a young linebacker on the team you're working with. To me, you play your best. Isn't that something Philbin's always saying about the offensive line? Is his canned answer. We're going to play the best 5 players we have on the offensive line. That I think that should always be his philosophy on defense. I'm going to play the best 11 guys on defense I have, and if Dion Jordan needs to play linebacker, that's where he should be playing. If he needs to play defensive end, that's where he should be playing. But he's definitely needs to be out there, and I think he can serve that capacity of being the backup. I don't know. I like I said, I like Derek Shelby. I feel like he's at a position of surplus right now that they're not going to be able to retain after this year. So it'd be an ideal time to try to move him for if they could get a reasonable mid-round pick for him.
Yeah. I doubt the Dolphins do much at the defensive end position. It seems like they're all set. I'd be surprised if they draft a defensive end in the early rounds of the draft. They might draft one later for competition after depth purposes, but I doubt we see much action going on there. I think the biggest topic will be, like we just spoke for quite a while, is Dion Jordan, and we'll see where they go from there. But moving on, I think, to the next spot of the podcast is the moment you've all been waiting for, our special teams.
Yay!
Hunter and long snapper. Chad, take it away, buddy.
Yeah, the special teams were special, all right, last year. I mean, I talk about a roller coaster ride for the season from our special teams, but I mean, obviously you didn't touch on it, but I mean, the bright spot clearly was Jarvis Landry's return ability. He provided sparks in several games from the return capacity. Going back to the players we touched on, John Denny, I haven't seen any fall off. And
best long snapper in the NFL.
Yeah, you could say that. I judge a long snapper on how many botched punt snaps do we have, and I can't remember one.
What about the little accident with Brandon Fields getting hit in the helmet with the football?
Oh, that was
yeah,
great.
but I don't blame that on John Denny. But anyway, I don't know what to do with Caleb Sturgis, guys. I don't even know how to evaluate him. It's one of those things where I've been very frustrated with him throughout the year because, you want the kicker that you feel like, once we're inside a 50-yard range field goal, we've got a guy that we know we've got 3 points. And I don't feel comfortable when Caleb Sturgis is kicking 35-yard field goals that I feel like he's going to hit it. And
Not at all.
and so that makes me, but it's such a difficult because, like, if I'm critical of him, I get a lot of negative pushback because he's such a popular figure in Florida from his,
Florida Gator.
And so I think because he was a Florida Gator and he was drafted, I think he's got an enormous leash. They've let him perform poorly. I mean, he's definitely in the bottom half of the league in kickers. He's not performing adequately, and so I don't think they have a choice but to at least bring in a Plan B option that's realistic. And so I think you need to look at
Zach Cocker.
No, I don't think that's anything but a camp body. I mean, I'm talking about literally like a Jay Feely or maybe make a run at Groskowski, actually pay the money. I mean, to me, it became clear that they should have paid the money to keep Carpenter in the first place.
We were complaining about Carpenter, though. We got to pick a side.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, not that Carpenter is a great, but I felt a lot better about him than I feel about Sturgis right now when we had to have some big time kicks. But I don't know, it has to be addressed because I made this joke literally to Matt just a few days ago. We were talking about what positions they needed to go for in the draft and were the most important positions, and I said I could just see them filling all these positions and have us go into the final game of the year and see Sturgis miss the game-winning kick to send us to 9-7
Seriously.
and not make the playoffs. I mean, that's that gut-wrenching to think about relying on him. So I just don't know. And kickers, I see progress, whether you're talking running backs or receivers or quarterbacks, you can see them progress. You see how they get better. And I have a tough time feeling that with kickers because so much of it is mental versus physical. Like, can you deal with the pressure and can you deal with the elements? And I watched that Packers-Seahawks game, and that was just an amazing kick that Mason Crosby hit. It was a mid-40s, I want to say it was. I don't remember the exact length of it, but it was in bad weather, playoffs on the line, and he hits like a 48-yard field goal in the wind and rain and snow or whatever was going on. It was just a very difficult kick, and I'm thinking to myself, no way in the world could Caleb Sturgis make this kick right now. And so that's what it sticks in my mind. So I think they have got to consider bringing a veteran in to at least I mean, for Sturgis to have to do really well with a lot of pressure on him in the preseason at the very minimum to prove that he can do that if they're going to go with him another year. I realize the advantage of him is he's cheap. They're not paying millions of dollars to him every year. But going to the other position, with him, Brandon Fields, he's had some really good seasons, but he's paid a ridiculous amount of money right now for a punter. I mean, if they cut Brandon Fields, that would free up $3.2 million on the salary cap. There's your differential if you want to give Mike Pouncey an extension, or there's the amount you can have to bring in another solid veteran defensive back that'll be on the field when you're in the nickel and dime. And so I
Can't we just restructure?
If he would do it, yeah, but
well, he's a punter. What's he gonna do? Fight for his money? Come on, he's a punter.
Well, I mean, he can walk, and I'm sure he'll get another contract. But I just feel like at that position, you can go pick up a free agent punter, you can draft a new punter, and as long as they're at least decent, it doesn't seem like punters impact the overall game that much to get paid that much of your salary cap. So they've got to address that contract they have with Brandon Fields right now, and he is coming off one of his down year on top of it, but. Would you rather see Miami have a rookie punter in there you don't know much about and pay Gronkowski a big contract to come in and be our kicker, or would you rather see Fields get it and keep Sturgis? I mean, that's when you think about it from that angle, that's hard to consider. But anyway,
it's tough to say. But in the end, I'm taking the more expensive kicker and the less expensive punter, mainly because punters don't score points. They might give up points based on their kicks and the fact that they didn't kick it high enough or deep enough or whatnot, but that doesn't show up in the box score. The box score shows that the kicker missed the field goal, possibly in a crucial moment, and because of that, the team did not win the game. So I'm going cheap punter all day, expensive kicker all day.
Okay, but this is the conundrum with me with Caleb Sturgis, though, and I'm going to harp back to his rookie season, and bear in mind, guys, I just looked this up, and I remember what had happened. I was so happy with Caleb Sturgis at first. Against Cleveland, he made 3 field goals. His longest was a 49. He made one against Indy. It was only one kick, though, so 54-yarder. 2 for 2 against Atlanta. 50 yards was his longest. Against New Orleans, he made one, 34 yards. And then in Baltimore is when everything went downhill. He made his first 3 kicks, no problem. A 48-yarder was his longest. And then he missed that one really long kick. And after that, Sturgis just disappeared, and he hasn't come back since. So it's not a matter of he can't do it. It's like, I don't know what happened. Something in his brain snapped. His leg can do it. We saw it do it in his rookie season. I was saying that Sturgis had the bionic leg. He had never missed up until that point. But once he did miss, I don't know what the heck happened to him. He just disappeared.
Yeah, I agree, Louis. It's to me that again, that's like I said, the mental aspect. I have no issue with Caleb Sturgis' leg. He's got a very solid leg. He's very capable of hitting mid 50-yard field goals on a consistent basis. He just doesn't, and he doesn't hit the 40-yard field goals enough on a consistent basis. And when it starts to play into the whole psyche of the game, you're thinking about. Do you try a 44, 45-yard field goal when it's 3rd and 2, or do you just go for it because you just don't feel confident that your kicker is going to get you those 3 points? And those are critical moments in a game. If you're in a tough game and you drive down the field and you have a 10 or 11 play drive and you're gutting it out and you get within field goal range and your field goal kicker misses it, that's such a huge momentum shift. The other team's getting the ball in good field position, and it's just a downer on your team. And he has not proven to me that he is a good kicker, and I just don't feel like he has the mental strength to put up in those situations, because Caleb Sturgis hardly had to kick any high pressure kicks this year, and he still had a bad year. I mean, I'm trying to think of can you tell me a kick Caleb Sturgis had to kick this year that decided a game? I don't remember.
Yeah. When I was in week 15, when I was playing Madden, I was driving out for the.
Don't tell me he missed, because that's your fault.
No, he made it.
So my point is, he hasn't been kicking pressure kicks, and so my point is if we are in the playoffs or we're right in the thick of a playoff run, here we are in New England, and it's 21-21 in the fourth quarter with 3 minutes left, and we've got to have a 48-yard field goal. Is he going to hit that kick? That's what it comes down to for me. And I don't know. I don't know that if he can deal with that pressure.
I would have loved to see what would have happened if Sturgis hadn't missed that one kick against Baltimore.
Well, I mean, maybe that affected him, but I mean, you've got to have of any position or anything in the NFL, you've got to have just ice in your veins, and you can't worry about your last kick. I mean, you got to perform, and that was a big mess in that game. But I mean, to me, that wasn't like, I wasn't that harsh on him then, because that was not like a 57-yard field goal or something like that. I mean, it was a hard kick, and not to mention, again, Baltimore cheated on that play and then get called. They were in an illegal block formation. But with that being said, I mean, that's a kick I can understand when you're kicking that length of a kick. If he doesn't hit it, that's fine. But I just don't feel like he can hit the a 48, 49, 51 yard field goal when the game's on the line. That's where I'm at.
Kathy, you going cheap punter, expensive kicker, cheap kicker, expensive punter?
As much as I love Brandon Fields, I would rather have a cheap punter and get a better kicker, because
Good girl.
You can't depend on Caleb Sturgis. You just can't.
So we're going Gostkowski, huh?
Yeah.
If he gets out of New England, I have the stats up on the screen right now that you guys are watching. If you're watching the TV, I guess TV version of the podcast, you'll see that Gostkowski all across the board has the best percentages, pretty much.
You only had to kick one kick for more than 50 yards, though.
Yeah, but that just goes to show that Belichick knows that 50-plus yards is a crapshoot with anybody. Okay, you'll see Belichick going for it when it's a 50-plus yard field goal, not a lot of the times if it's short yardage situations. So that's just smart coaching. Look at the Dolphins, six attempts, 50-plus yards. That's kind of crazy. I mean, I guess it's no better the Ravens had 9 attempts, but I don't know. That's why I'm terrible. That's why I'm not an NFL head coach. Justin Tucker's a restricted free agent, by the way, so it wouldn't just be he's hitting the market.
Right.
And then as far as punters go, I got that up on the screen as well now. Look at the free agent punters who are available. You really don't got much. But Brandon Fields, he's scheduled to make so much money in 2015, $3.9 million. That's crazy for a punter.
Net yards per punt, though. Way more than the other 3.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to evaluate special teams. That's why they have special teams coaches and special teams coordinators, I guess. All right.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, John Denny's probably staying, right? No one's getting rid of him. You guys getting rid of John Denny?
No way.
What for? How much is he making?
He's not making a ton. I think it's like $1.8 million in 2015. Caleb Sturgis is going to a kicking camp. Maybe he's getting better. Hopefully he's not teaching anybody how to kick.
I have no problem if he wins it, but I want to bring in at least like a Jay Feely type of a kicker, a veteran, and then put a lot of pressure on Sturgis. Like, I want every single kick Caleb Sturgis kicks in training camp and in the preseason to have his job on the line, and I want to see him hit those kicks, because that's a pressure situation he's in, and if he's struggling in those situations, that tells me I just don't think he's going to handle the game pressure situations. We're going to have to move on, but I don't want to see them just bring in some Lewis Sung off the street. Here's your competition at kicker.
Well, I don't want an old guy like Chad Ronenbaum in there either.
Exactly.
I got a young leg. What do you got, Chad?
If I'm getting a phone call from Dennis Hickey said, hey, you want to come into training camp and compete against Caleb Sturgis to kick, I'm going to tell him no, because you need a real field goal kicker in there to compete with him. So.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I don't know if the Dolphins will replace Sturgis, won't want to replace Sturgis. We'll see what happens with Fields. Who knows? It's too early to say at this point in the process of what the Dolphins are going to do there, but we can at least think what the Dolphins should do and give our opinion on it for sure. So that's going to wrap it up for our position analysis this week on PhinManiacs podcast, PhinManiacs Live. Next week, we're going to create a free agency plan for the linebacker, cornerback, and safety positions. They need desperate help at linebacker. Whether it's inside or outside, who knows? There's not a ton of options available in free agency. There are a few options in the draft, but we're going to focus on free agency. They're also, of course, need help with cornerback. Perhaps a lot of people are saying they are, but think about it. You got Brent Grimes, Jamar Taylor, Will Davis. You got others who can jump in and step up. Michael Thomas, for example. while Akins, we'll see. We'll go through the analysis there. And then, of course, Luis Delmas, not expected back with the team after suffering a major injury. Yeah, I know you like him. But if you notice, I put who can fill the void both on and off the field. Delmas was a great presence in the locker room. So we're going to discuss those three positions. Yeah, those three positions next week we're going to discuss. We thank you for listening to us this week. That's going to wrap it up. Be sure to follow us on Twitter. Our Twitter names are right below on your screen there. Be also sure to visit PhinManiacs.com on a daily basis for all the latest news and rumors regarding your Miami Dolphins and the rest of the NFL. Find us on iTunes, search PhinManiacs. We're on the Google Play Store, search PhinManiacs, and we'll be on iOS in the App Store within the next week or two. Again, thanks for joining us. We hope you have a great week, and we'll catch you next time on the PhinManiacs podcast. Have a great one.